Ever stop and think about how the stuff you buy actually gets made? Well, today we're digging into a revolutionary idea that completely flipped the world of manufacturing on its head. We're talking about a real showdown between two very simple but incredibly powerful ideas, just in time versus just in case. Let's get into it. So let me start by asking you this. What if having more of something was actually the problem? I mean, we're all taught that having a surplus, a safety net, is always a good thing. But what if that safety net wasn't a cushion at all? What if it was just a smoke screen hiding much, much bigger problems? And this slide right here gets to the absolute heart of it. These are two completely opposite ways of looking at the world. On one side, you have the old school just-in-case method, where a big pile of inventory is seen as an asset, something valuable. But on the other side, you've got this radical just-in-time idea, where that exact same pile is seen as a costly liability. That one little shift in perspective, it sparked a revolution. Okay, so let's dig into that first. Before we can really appreciate the new way, we have to understand what was so wrong with the old way. The problem with having plenty. So the old method was called just in case. And, on the surface, it makes a lot of sense, right? You just build up this big buffer of inventory, you do it based on a schedule, so the next person on the assembly line always has the parts they need. No one's waiting around, there's no downtime. Seems simple enough. But here's the catch, the hidden danger. What happens if some of the parts in that giant pile are defective? Well, with a huge surplus, who cares? You just grab another one. The line keeps moving, that faulty part gets tossed, and the real reason for the defect, well, it never gets fixed. That big cushion of inventory was actually hiding all the quality problems, just letting them fester under the surface. So if that cushion was hiding all the problems, how do you find them? Well, that brings us to the revolution, just in time, or JIT. And this wasn't some tiny tweak. It was a completely new, radical way of thinking about the entire manufacturing process. This quote right here is the core principle. It flips everything upside down. Inventory is not your friend. It's a liability. It costs money to store, it can become obsolete, and most importantly, it hides your problems. The whole philosophy of JIT is just this. Only make what is needed exactly when it's needed. Period. And the benefits were immediate and just huge. I mean, think about it. If you're not making tons of extra stuff, you have way less money tied up in things that are just sitting on a shelf. You need less warehouse space, that saves a fortune, you pay lower taxes, and you have so much less risk of getting stuck with a mountain of parts for a product that no one even wants anymore. So this image sums up the key pieces of the puzzle. At its heart is something called a pull system. We're going to get to that in just a second. That pull system naturally leads to having very low inventory. And, this part's crucial, it forces you to stop dealing with tons of different suppliers and instead build really strong, reliable relationships with just a few great ones. Okay, so how does this whole thing actually work on a factory floor? Well, it all hinges on this one brilliant concept, the pull system. Let's break down what that really means. See, the old way was a push system. You'd look at a forecast, push a ton of materials into the factory, make the stuff, and then just hope you could sell it all. A pull system is the complete opposite. Nothing gets made until the next step in the process, which is ultimately you, the customer, sends a signal that they need it. Production is literally pulled along by real demand, not pushed by a hopeful guess. Here's a really simple way to picture it. Think of a fast food place that makes 100 burgers at lunchtime and keeps them all under a heat lamp. That's a push system. Now think about a nice sit-down restaurant where the chef only starts cooking your steak after you've ordered it. That's a perfect real-world example of a pull system. Now here's the crazy part. When you have no buffer stock, what happens? If a machine breaks down or a part is bad, the entire line just stops. There are no spare parts to grab. Now that sounds like a total disaster, but it's actually the system's greatest strength. It forces everyone to become obsessed with preventing problems before they happen. The only goals that make sense anymore are zero defects and zero breakdown. And this obsessive focus on perfection, on eliminating every single problem, it grew into something way bigger than just an inventory system. It evolved into a whole management philosophy we now call lean manufacturing. So, lean is really built on these 5 big ideas. First, value. You have to know what your customer actually cares about. Then, you map the value stream, looking at every single step and ruthlessly cutting out anything that doesn't add value. Third is flow and pull. That's our JIT, making sure work moves smoothly based on real demand.
Fourth is empowerment, giving your people on the ground the authority to make things better. And finally, perfection, this idea that you're just never ever done improving.
So as you can probably imagine, making this happen is not just a policy change. It means you have to rethink the entire factory, from how the machines are laid out to the company culture and the role that every single employee plays. So on the left, you see the old way. A part would just snake all over the factory, going from the cutting department over to welding, then way over to the painting department. The new way, on the right, is a cellular layout. You group all the machines you need for one product together into a little U-shaped cell. Each cell basically becomes its own mini factory, which cuts down on movement and wasted time like you wouldn't believe. And this is where the human element becomes so critical. In one of these cells, workers can't just be specialists who know one machine. For the whole system to work, and to avoid people just standing around, every worker has to be multi-skilled. They need to be able to operate all the equipment in their cell, and that requires a huge investment in training and a culture that really empowers employees.
All right, let's do a quick check-in with a question from the source material. When a company switches over to a just-in-time system, what do they often experience? Is it A, a reduction in the number of suppliers? B, fewer deliveries from the suppliers they have? C, a greater need to inspect incoming parts? Or D, less need for computerized ordering? Take a second to think about it.
And the answer is A. Remember, JIT is all about reliability and zero defects. You can't get that by constantly shopping around for the cheapest bid. Instead, you have to build these deep, trusting partnerships with a smaller group of amazing suppliers who can guarantee perfect quality and perfect timing every single time. And that brings us to our last thought for today. The big breakthrough of JIT was looking at something everyone saw as an asset, inventory, and realizing it was actually a liability. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other things in our jobs or even in our lives do we think of as assets that are actually holding us back, masking deeper problems and keeping us from getting better? Something to chew on.